at what actually goes into the creation of a TV show script or a pilot script for a show. Because when we are writing a pilot script, we have to not only be thinking of what's going to be happening in this very first episode, and that's where the majority of our effort should really be oriented, but it needs to feel as if this is a theoretical first episode of a show that could expand out to, contain years and years of episodes and entertainment. Unless we're doing a miniseries or a limited series, a lot of shows are intended to run for years, so it needs to feel like there is enough there and enough conflict in your show and enough of what we call the story engine to make it feel like that you actually would be able to cover the material that you have there, or that maybe grow or expand from the starting point that you give us. It just needs to feel like it could last for years of scripted entertainment. So we'll be looking at some of those basics of what goes into a show today, what goes into a premise, a logline, how to design a cast of characters, and we're going to look at the plot of my recent pilot, which is called Knave. Let's get started. So first, make sure to check that your audio remains muted during the class. So you can click that small gray microphone icon in the bottom left corner of your Discord screen. You can see what it looks like here. That's the mute or unmute button. So if it does not appear, that means that you are able to speak and be heard. So keep that microphone icon on. Stay muted until you are called on, or unless you're ready to speak. I'll have lots of chances for people to speak up and be heard in Script Camp classes. So these are very interactive, but just make sure that mute button is on most of the time. And if you need to adjust someone's volume, you can right-click on their name and adjust that small blue bar so that if somebody's too loud or too quiet, you can get it just where it needs to be. Okay, let's keep going here. So what is Script Camp? We are a screenwriting community that's intended to take you from concept to idea to first draft to more polished script. So we have lots of free classes and events and workshops, with some classes for supporting members like the boot camps, writers labs on Saturdays, and advanced lab. This is one of our free public classes, so if you enjoy stuff like this, you should consider signing up and becoming a subscriber. And if you become a subscriber, then you'll get access to everything that we do here. We have tons of classes that are not even screenwriting related that you'll find in our company, which is called Skill Camp. We're a nonprofit organization with free and low-cost classes to help you learn skills and reach your life goals. We have many different Discord servers besides this one. You can see right here just a sample. We have Film Camp, Toon Camp, Creator Camp, Word Camp, Design Camp, and Lingo Camp. A lot of these have weekly classes either going on now or starting soon, so you can start to learn these skills to reach your life goals, with more classes coming soon, and for both public free ones and also classes for supporting members. I think I'm hearing someone's mic. If you could just make sure your mic is muted, click that small gray microphone icon in the bottom left corner of your screen. What else? Plenty of other classes going on. We have weekly classes currently in Toon Camp and starting soon in Code Camp. So if you want to learn how to animate or how to use programming languages and how to write programs, then Code Camp or Toon Camp are great places to go. And we'll have other new classes announced soon for Film Camp, Creator Camp, and Lingo Camp. So definitely just stop by those servers and say hi. We have more free classes in Script Camp coming up this week, including this Friday. We have one called The Best Protagonist for Your Story, Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific time. All these are in Pacific time. That's going to look at how do we match and find the right character to go through a specific journey, and how to actually make it feel like that journey is cohesive and supports the major themes of your that you're trying to tell in your narrative, and all these things. So that will be Friday, January 6th at 11 a.m. to 1. And then later that same day, we have TV Pilot Bootcamp resuming from before the holidays. We'll be starting with week 2, Breaking the Story, Friday, January 6th at 6 p.m. So if you enjoy what we're doing today, which is talking a lot about plotting of pilots, you should come by TV Pilot Bootcamp, and you will write a whole pilot in just 6 weeks of class. We've done our first class meeting before the break, so I guess we have 5 weeks remaining of that one. We have Feature Bootcamp starting up Sunday, January 8th, coming right up this Sunday. We have week 1 at 11 a.m. That will be running Sundays from 11 to 1 for the next 8 weeks. And that class is basically how to write a movie 101, where you will learn how to come up with a premise and condense it into a logline and build it out into a sketchbook and expand that sketchbook into what we call story beats, a story beat summary, and which you will then expand even further into a full set of scene cards. You will take those scene cards and then write out a full 90 to 120 page document for your script in the 8 weeks that we're running. So that will be roughly running until mid-March. So plenty of things coming up in this week and also just in the weeks to come, with more classes being announced soon, including pretty soon we'll have announcements on the next round of our novel writing bootcamp on WordCamp 2, Currently, we're on hiatus there as I figure out the schedule, and also maybe doing a few free promotional classes. But if you're interested in writing prose, short stories, or articles, then check out WordCamp as well. That's the teal server that you saw. This one here, yeah, with the light blue. And stop by and say hi. So let's look at the schedule coming up. We won't go way too in depth on this, but we have week 2 for TV Pilot Bootcamp coming up, where we're going to be looking at that story beats summary, which I mentioned before is kind of just the list of events in the right order that they need to go in your show, with the clarification of their structural roles, just in the sense that we're filling out a template or an outline, knowing what needs to go into each of these sections, and we're kind of just building out the events of your story in a broad perspective. So we don't need to know every single scene, but we're going to work out just the basic bullet points of what occurs in the episode. Week 3 is on scene cards. That's a full paragraph for every single scene in the episode, with the goal being that you're going to try to know what happens on every page before you start. And we're going to look at some of my outlining documents today to show you what scene cards look like, or how I envision them at the very least, and to maybe get a good sense of how much detail you should be including, or you can start to maybe think, that looks like way more detail than I would include, or that looks like way less. And you can always adjust and find your own sort of method through this as we go. But I think looking at some of my completed documents might just help you get a baseline for what to expect here, or what to expect that you'll be working on. So we have week 4 is January 20, week 5 is 27th, third act is going to be February 3rd. Sorry, I should clarify. We have week 4 is first act, week 5 is second act, week 6 is third act, with the full thing being done by February 10th. So for the first half of Pilot Bootcamp, we are planning and plotting, and then for the second half, we are writing, and we were going to pages, as we say, which means that we actually start staging scenes and writing dialogue and blocking and all that kind of stuff. So for any of the boot camps, you don't even need to install screenwriting software until halfway through. That is how much time that we put into planning and plotting and figuring everything out. So this is really essential skills, especially if you want to work in a TV room where you're going to be working a lot and moving things and shuffling things around and modifying them at the outline stage. If you're going to be working in a writer's room, you absolutely need to have a very, very clear understanding of structure and of pre-writing, which is going to be everything that takes you from research through story beats through scene cards. And so it's like figuring out what goes in the show and in what order it goes in. That's basically what pre-writing is. Okay, so that's just an overview of the upcoming bootcamp schedule. We're not actually starting the bootcamp today. That is starting very soon. Again, January 6th at 6 p.m. is when you can come by a class for that one. That will be a free class, so no need to sign up if you don't want. But if you sign up after that, then you can make sure that you will get your 2-week free trial, and you can try out as many classes as you want within your trial period. So you can donate, you can become a supporting member and get access to all boot camps and labs. Every single thing that we do, if you become a supporting member, you will get full access to all of it on all these servers. You don't have to sign up per server, skill camp. Currently, our website is scriptcamp.net that you'll sign up on, but soon we will be changing that to our skill. We will be working on building out a skill camp page. But for now, if you sign up on Script Camp, you will get access to all of these classes. You can also volunteer if you know a skill or language you might like to teach. You can contact me or Nacho, our co-founder, and let us know what it is that you might want to volunteer and help everyone out by teaching. You can also tell your friends, refer someone, and you'll both get a free month of unlimited membership and a free month of Arc Studio Pro, which is a great screenwriting software. Okay, I think that's all the intro stuff out of the way. Let's get into this. This is just a breakdown of the everything membership includes. Last notes here are that we have about 100 hours of live classes a month at this point, or approaching 100 hours if we're including clubs and workshops and things like that. You will get access to the weekly Writers Lab, the Advanced Lab, and $100 off of consultations, proofreads, and any other things like that if you sign up for Unlimited. This comes with a free trial and also a yearly subscription option, which means that you'll save 40% if you buy yearly. We also have options for coaching, which you can see over there on the right if you're looking for more of one-on-one meetings week by week. But I won't go way too into that. You can see what that includes there. That also has a yearly option. All right. Oh, that says insert slides here. So I think that for this class, I am going to keep this kind of fast and loose, and we're going to just kind of talk about, first of all, the things that go into a TV show idea, and we're going to look at how do you build from that very core, the most elemental expression of what the idea is, and how do we keep building on that and keep building on that until we have everything that we need, because as TV writers, all that we really need, our objective is not to write the whole show, first of all. You're not, when you're trying to break into TV writing, your goal is, first of all, just get really obscenely good at writing pilots. Your first pilot you ever write will not get made into a show. I pretty much guarantee you. It takes many, many years to build these skills that you need in order to be doing, to juggle all the balls and spin all the plates, as we sometimes say, and in enough that you can be writing marketable, sellable pilots that are written at a professional level. You're in one of the most competitive industries in the entire world, and your first few scripts are probably not going to cut it. So, like, don't go into approaching TV writing saying, oh, I have an idea for a show. I'm going to make a show now, and I'm going to get it made. A TV pilot is a proposition to create a multi-million-dollar company that will employ hundreds of people for years. Your first ever script is probably not going to do that. So always just go into this with the perspective of, I need to improve and get really good first before I'm going to have any of these scripts or ideas that are going to be worth those, hundreds of millions of dollars and hundreds of people that you'll be employing over the years. So it will take a while, and you should just focus on getting really, really good at writing and developing just the bare essentials of what we're looking for, which is, one, you want to have a pilot script. That's all you really need. The other things that you might need would be something like a show Bible, which is going to express more like, it's going to give you a broader look at here's all the characters, here's really a clarification of the story engine, here's what the tone of the show is like, here's where it's kind of going, and here's some examples maybe of ideas for future episodes. You don't really need to write those, unless you're to the point where people are asking for those. But they're only really going to ask for them if you have a really slam dunk awesome pilot to begin with. So there's no point in writing a bunch of show Bibles if you're not good at writing pilots yet. And if you're just starting, you're not good at writing pilots yet, which is okay. I think that the first things that we need to think of are, one, just the bare core, like, kernel of the idea, the nucleus of the idea, that one, the atom at the very center of it. So let's just think of how do you explain what a show is to somebody? Oh, you should check out that show about that chemistry teacher that makes meth, right? Like, it's that simple, isn't it? Maybe you guys can feel free to speak up and say, what's your favorite show? Just condense it into, like, a few words like that. And how would you just, like, tell one of your friends what it's about if you're trying to get them to watch it? You can't be too complicated, right? Feel free to weigh in and speak up and say, just pitch me a show like I just did. Like, oh, it's about this chemistry teacher that becomes a drug lord. Something like that. Anyone, feel free to speak up and tell us about a show. And if you've muted, you can click the gray microphone icon in the bottom left to unmute yourself and be heard on the mic.
Yeah, I saw a show. So sometimes it's kind of hard to find stuff to watch with your family, like during the holidays, that everybody can watch.
Mm-hmm.
And I seem to find that, BBC programs seem to, like, work for any age group, or, especially like elderly people and stuff. And
it's BBC and it's nature documentaries. You got to go with nature documentaries.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's hard. That's one of the problems. I think this is part of the reason why streaming episodic content, like, so in demand, because it takes you a freaking hour to find what movie you're going to watch. And if you find a show that everybody likes, well, then tomorrow you don't have to think about it. You just watch the next episode, right? I recently started watching, so we were doing, like, a remote watching with some family members and stuff, and everybody's, like, watching at the same time. This show called Grantchester, which is, the title sounds terrible to me. It doesn't sound interesting at all. It's a vicar with conflicts of faith, or whatever, crisis of faith, helps a 1950s detective solve murders.
Oh,
and that's easy. The whole, in a small British town, right?
So it's like a buddy cop cozy mystery.
Oh, your mic is muted, Connor.
Oh, my bad. Hang on. There we go. So it's like a buddy cop cozy mystery set in the 50s.
Exactly.
And it's a priest teams up with a detective?
Yeah, the kind of a British, they go, what's the difference between a vicar and a priest?
I don't know.
All this
What's
kind
a
of stuff.
But I've never known.
Well, it's like, the Church of England. So he can marry,
Oh,
but
okay.
he can't marry the woman of his dreams because she's divorced. So there's no, it's just forbidden,
Sure, sure, sure.
But yeah, it's a cool show. It's actually, pretty good. But yeah, you can just get the concept really easily.
It's super easy. Cop teams up with blank is like one of the most sort of tried and true this meets that team, or like mashups and expressions of a premise that we find in TV and books and all these things. We've seen cop teams up with a psychic. We've seen cop teams up with special forces. We've seen good cop teams up with crazy cop. We've seen every version of cop teams up with blank, but it always works because you see why, right? It's because it is so easy to express at that core level. We know exactly what the show is, and you've described it in basically 3 or 4 words. It's not going to be blindingly original, probably, unless it's like, I don't know, cop teams up with demigod or something weird like that. But even if it is something kind of like that, we're going to imagine, okay, this has the format of a cop show. Every week there's going to be a crime. Our opening scene is going to be that crime occurring, and then our next scene is going to be our cop shows up on the scene and now needs to find clues. And we know what the objective is going to be on an episode by episode basis very easily. So yeah, cop teams up with blank is one of the just easiest ways to think of that core kernel of the idea. We're not being complicated here. You're trying to, in fact, be as simple as possible. Does somebody else have just a really quick pitch for a show like that? It doesn't have to like be amazing, but just tell us at the very core level, what is the show?
I'd like to try.
Go ahead.
I finished watching a series. So a woman who did not live an honest life at all wakes up in the afterlife and discovers she's in heaven, but only because of a mix-up with a saint-like woman that shares her name and birthplace, and that she really should be in hell.
Okay, a couple too many words to express the good place. I think you're saying bad person shows up in heaven and now needs to do what?
Yes. Okay, a bad person. Okay, that's a better word. I don't know why I couldn't figure that out.
It's okay. Just too many words to express it.
A bad
I get what you
person
mean.
wakes up. Yeah, well, a bad person wakes up in heaven because of a mix-up with someone who shares her name and birthplace.
Right, and now she's trying to stay there, right?
And yeah, and now she's trying to stay there. Yeah.
Right. Okay, great. So yeah, I get that idea. A bad person dies and somehow goes to heaven and now thinks that she's gotten away with something and needs to kind of like remain in stealth mode so she doesn't get kicked out of heaven. That's the premise of at least the first season of The Good Place, right?
Yeah. I just finished season 4. It's so good. I forgot how. I mean, I liked it, but the second time around, I got so much more out of it. And what a high concept. Yeah. Have you seen it?
I've seen the first season, and I know it gets crazy and it changes a lot as it goes on. I've had a little spoiled for me, so I don't want to spoil for anyone else.
Yeah. Second season is a different premise in a sense because things shift, but
right.
And then the third and fourth are kind of the first 2 I like the best, but it really never stops being insightful, which is pretty cool. So, anyways, that's my pitch.
But yeah, exactly. So we're trying to boil just down to a couple words. So we could say bad person dies, goes to heaven. Was that 6 words? I'm counting. Maybe we don't need to count them. But bad person wakes up in heaven, now needs to find a way to stay there. That's the premise of that show. So if we're always looking at just that kind of core kernel of the conflict, it needs to be something that doesn't take multiple sentences to express. Once we evolve this core concept into what we call a log line, that's like a written expression of just this core premise, and it needs to include a little bit more. Does one more person want to? Oh, Paul has given us one. Paul, can you read this out for us?
Yeah, sure. After the death of his mother, a petty thief teams up with a group of professional con artists to take down other criminal organizations.
And what show is this?
Great Pretender.
Great Pretender. I've never heard of that. So
it's awesome.
It's awesome. Is it a new show or is that an older one?
It's not like brand new. It came out maybe a few years back.
So help me understand the hook here, because I haven't seen this or heard of this. A petty thief teams up with a group of professionals. So is the hook like this guy doesn't know what he's doing and now he's in over his head, or what exactly is the hook?
Yeah, pretty much.
It is. Okay. So I don't think the death of his mother is really necessary in the like if we're trying to say chemistry teacher makes meth is the very core of the show, then we don't need to say chemistry teacher finds out he has cancer and decides to make meth teaming up with this guy from one of his old students in order to secure money for his family's future, right? So you've maybe tried to include a little bit too much of it. In the core concept, it would just be terrible thief joins competent group of thieves, right? If that is indeed the hook. Maybe that's not exactly it, but do you see what I mean? Maybe
Mostly,
can you think
that's
of how to
pretty much
condense
it.
Oh,
Okay.
that is it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so he's not good at what he does, but he's joined them because he has some kind of good cause or like higher objective that he's trying to accomplish. He's trying to beat some other bad guys. Is that right?
That's kind of what it like becomes over the course of the show. But
Okay.
yeah, pretty much.
Gotcha. And the title is usually going to be a really key part of the hook, or it's going to clarify what the hook is. It's like the icing on top of a nice high concept pitch. So is Great Pretender referring to your main character here? And sorry, this isn't your show, but the main character of Great Pretender?
Yeah, they're.
And what's he pretending?
I mean, it's a. I mean, they're all like he becomes like a con artist, like how the other people in the group are. So it's like they're pretending to be all these different, I guess, characters to scam these like criminals and shit
Okay,
like
so
that.
he's trying to become a Great Pretender. It's referring to like his aspiration. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Or I could see this also being called something like Great Pretenders, or just Pretenders, or something along those lines too. So yeah, I think now that you've explained it a little bit, I do get it. Try to just keep it in just a couple words though, just as simple as like, this guy does this thing. If that alone is enough, we want to be getting at what is the fun, what is the appeal of the show, because sometimes you can have just a core kernel of an idea that's as simple as it's a job. Like if we look at workplace comedies or things like procedurals, it's like, okay, crime scene investigators solve a case by case, week crime of the week every week. At one point, that was a somewhat innovative idea, considering that there was not a CSI until CSI came out, right? I know we had other police shows, but the idea of focusing on the people that, the techs and stuff that need to go and pick up the clues and analyze what the clues mean in the lab and things like that, at one point was somewhat novel. So you can see also maybe just like a show. How about just a sitcom about teachers in the inner city schools? That would be like Abbott Elementary, right? There's nothing really much. I think as we continue to build it out, you will be adding layers and nuances to it and specificity to it. But at the very basics, you need to be able to express your show in just those terms. So if we ask, so what's your show? And you start saying, okay, the Darknarian cluster is a subspace of the Randolph sector of T9 galaxy, and you start telling us about like the galaxies and the realms that we're just going to be like, what? I don't care. You need to actually like have a core premise that is so easily expressible that even if you give the very reductive form of it, it sounds interesting and cool. Chemistry teacher turns into drug kingpin. Even if you don't have the context of why that happens, you're still kind of leaning in and saying, oh, I'm interested in that transformation of nerdy, lame guy to badass, cool criminal guy. He's not cool, but, ruthless criminal guy. So you can see that just in those couple words, we get the sense of what the show is going to be. What is the arc and what is the transformation? Or otherwise, what is the thing going to be that we're encountering week after week? Because if you say something like, it's going to be like The Borrowers meet CSI. Okay, tiny crimes. It's we're following a family of mice who solve crimes together. Yeah, that's right, mice crime. If it's as simple as that, that should make your audience lean in. I know that sounds stupid, mice crime. But, like, I've never seen that before. And the fact that you're just taking something familiar and recontextualizing it as mashed up or combined with or juxtaposed to something else, sometimes that can be a really easy way to find that core kernel of the hook. Think of the Cop and the Vicar show that Nacho mentioned. It's like you could just say, oh, it's a mystery show. We could, okay, we're not really leaning in. But now that we say, oh, it's a priest is the main character who teams up with a cop to solve crimes, within the world of that genre, that is kind of enough variation and specificity that the interested audience in that is now leaning in. If you didn't like cozy mysteries, you're probably not. But if you did, then you are, and that's the important thing. Okay, so I want to just stop for any questions so far on just this idea of that core kernel, or let's just call it the nucleus of the idea. And does anyone that's pitching a show today or wants feedback on a show today just have the nucleus of their show they want to just tell me really quick in just a couple words? It's so rainy outside. It never rains in LA.
Hello.
Hi.
So I didn't have it written out, but I'll try to be short with it.
That's okay. Go ahead.
In a world, okay. In a world of spirits and humans, a spirit hunter is lost and separated from his family and must rely on a kind spirit to lead him back to his family.
Okay, so too many. This sounds a little bit like a logline, which is what we'd build out to from the core kernel. But it sounds like the core kernel is this is a team up story between enemies, right? You said a spirit hunter teams up with a spirit.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so spirit. If that sounds like that is the core hook of your show. So, and I think he's going on kind of an adventure to get back home. Is this sort of like every week there's going to be some new obstacle, like Samurai Jack, that kind of show where it's like he has an objective that's really far off in the distance, and it's more about the kind of week by week adventures?
Correct. Yeah.
It is. Okay, so I see it. I totally see the core kernel of the idea. I'm with you. I don't really know what the world looks like because you pitched kind of a fantasy show that the world could be sort of anything. But at least I've gotten the idea of Spirit Hunter teams up with Spirit, and they need to work together in order for him to get home. I don't know what the Spirit's getting out of it, but like in order to get home, he needs to team up with his greatest enemy. This is the sort of basics of something like How to Train Your Dragon, or we mentioned buddy cop stories, which a lot of the time is going to be, cop that hates hamsters teams up with cop that loves hamsters. And it's like that basic, just like this person in needing to work with this person is going to suggest a story engine and conflict to it. So nice work with that. I do see the basics of the show just from that core pitch. If you pitch it in just the nucleus of it, though, just a couple words, though. Spirit Hunter needs to team up with a spirit, something like that. But nice work. Anyone else have any of these or questions on this?
Yeah, I had the core idea type thing for my pilot that I made a while back, but it's a group of state fair workers deal with paranormal creatures. That's like the simplest way I can think to explain it.
Nice. So when you say they deal with paranormal creatures, are you referring to the fact like their job is to keep the fair running in the face of attacks by paranormal creatures or something like that? Or are they going out of their way to find paranormal creatures?
They are like trying to keep the fair running.
I see.
Despite the fact that like paranormal creatures and paranormal happenings happen there. Something like that.
So do you see how the way you've expressed it is ambiguous, because it could be that we're following a group of state fair workers in their off time as they form a monster hunting clique and go to find monsters on their own, when that's not what you're saying. What you're saying is they're trying to maintain a fair in a world of monsters and magic and things like that. So I think that you're close, and I could have probably figured out what you meant just based on the way that you explained it. But just to avoid ambiguity, we'd probably want to say something like, state fair or carnival workers or fair workers need to keep their carnival running despite being attacked by monsters, or despite, problems caused by monsters, or they need to keep monsters out of the fair. Something like that just explains that, no, they're still trying to do their jobs.
Yeah.
Because it's a comedy. So most people if it weren't a comedy, if monsters attacked their workplace, they would leave and no longer work there. But because this is a comedy, then the hook needs to kind of express what's funny about it. Does that make sense? And the thing that's funny about this hook is the fact that they are still trying to do their minimum wage jobs. Make sense?
Yeah, I feel that.
Cool. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we want to make sure we have just that core hook in place, because it's super important to just be able to tell someone what your show is without having to go into tons of detail. Some folks have posted more in the chat. Let me just look at them really quick. Margie says, an intergalactic team explores the universe. Okay, yep, I'm into it. I think I can see I'm more or less in for the show. It kind of just sounds like any of the Star Trek shows. So I'd look for just like a little bit clearer of a hook, although I do see it. It's not that I can't imagine what the show is. I'm just like, all right, I've seen that show and every variation of that show, so just maybe clarify a little bit more what makes yours stand out and what makes yours separate and unique, right? Because we could have, for Breaking Bad, we could say nerdy guy becomes a badass guy, but it's a chemistry teacher that becomes a meth dealer. So the specificity makes it make a lot of sense and makes you lean in and go, oh, wait, a chemistry teacher would be really good at making drugs, right? So maybe just clarify a little bit more what the specific hook for yours is. UE Alpha says, a pair of urban city detectives go undercover to take on dangerous cases around New York. This is the same sort of deal where it's just like, I feel like I understand what you're saying and I get what the show would be, but I just feel like I've seen every version of that show and I don't really feel like you've clarified what is unique about yours. This is not really like the main goal of our class right now. It's not to find the most original ideas ever, so don't worry way too much about that. You have done a good job of expressing just what the show is at the core level. But if we're trying to critique these a little bit, then you hook people in by finding something a little bit unique, a unique point of view, or a unique main character, or some combination of elements that we haven't seen before, or what is some tactic that your main character uses to accomplish their goal that we haven't always seen before. Think of all these cop and mystery shows. This detective has OCD. This detective can see the dead. Like, we want to be a little bit more specific than this if you can. Thanks for listing these guys. I hope that's helpful just in terms of expression of your core idea. It could very much be that your show has those elements of specificity to it and you just need to make it come through in just that little nucleus, Oh, UA Alpha says, I thought we were mentioning examples of pitches from other shows. We were doing that a couple minutes ago. So yeah, you're right. If you were just doing Star Trek, if you were just expressing what is Star Trek, it would be team of interplanetary diplomats go around the galaxy, or we could say explore the galaxy, or solve problems in the galaxy, or something like that. For sure, you could. Okay, so let's keep going here. So I think that I want to look at just the outlining documents for my show called Knave. So we're going to start with a sketchbook. I think I have this, don't I? Oh, I might need to bring this up. 1 second. Here we go. Okay, so the very first thing we work on is the sketchbook, which is just, and this is in the script camp kind of instruction method, which is what I use for myself as well. The first thing is you're going to want to make a blank Google document, which is a place to gather all your research together. And this is like, this would not necessarily be the case in a writer's room situation because there's already going to have been a pilot written and the basics are already going to have been worked out. So if you're staffing on a show or something like that, you don't have to figure out the basics of what the show is. But if we're writing pilots and you're writing pilots that you would intend to be read and intend to actually perhaps be used as writing samples or maybe even be, entries in your portfolio that you intend to get work with someday in one form or another, then it helps to think of some of the basics, such as the title, first of all, is going to clarify the hook. So a title that is going to be telling us what we're doing in the show, or what who the main character of the show is, or what is the fun of the show, or what is the specific unique take on this show. So title's useful. So for mine, I'm just going to go through a couple things here at the very top. And in your sketchbook, there's no wrong things to include, but I'm just going to scroll through mine and not actually linger on anything too much. But you're going to include everything from pictures or videos which sort of inspire you. You're going to include research material and just clips of lines that you come up with out of context for your characters to use. If you have ideas for characters or scenes, I found this image to be very inspiring, these gestures sort of pulling the strings at the court, for instance. And you're going to just include everything. So for me, these end up being about 20 to 30 pages usually. And you're going to include also just your, if you are taking passes at the scene cards or at the story beat synopsis or anything like that. And also just any other just random stuff that you want to work on, such as like, I'm going to figure out a little bit more about the characters, for instance. The sketchbook is for everything. So you should make the sketchbook and not censor or not you want to put absolutely everything in here. So from the sketchbook, I will always put a couple things at the top because these, and you don't need to have perfect versions of these right away, but these are useful things to have eventually. The first are going to be comps. So comps stands for comparables, and these are going to be other shows that are kind of like your show. So in my case, I think I started out with Fleabag meets The Greats on my show Knave, but I narrowed this down. I think I eventually decided on The Tudors meets The Greats. And you might think of this as it's the world of the first thing and the style or the approach of the second thing, but there's not really an exact science to it. So the goals are you want to pick no more than 2 shows and at least one of them should be a TV show. One of them could be a movie or a video game or something like that, but if you're pitching a TV, then at least one of your comps should be a TV show. So for me, what was the core kernel of the idea? Let's do a show about a court jester. That's just like the incredibly basic version of it. And then I thought a little more as to, well, what does a court jester actually do, right? And there's this very complex role that court jesters were said to have had in various courts and societies across the world. They're not just there to make jokes and be a clown, but they are there to act as an informal advisor to the king. Whether the king knows it or not, they're sort of influencing him, or the rulers, the ruling family, whoever it is. And through their performances, their shows, and just talking to them and keeping them around, the jester would sort of influence how things go in the kingdom. And so I was thinking, who would be a jester that we want to see a show about? And the answer is, of course, a jester that needs to do the thing that I just mentioned a lot. A jester that needs to maintain, keep things running smoothly in the kingdom, because it's a kingdom that needs to be steered along the right path. I was very also inspired by this picture of this Polish jester, Stanchik, from the 1500s, who is sort of a notorious version of this archetype of the kind of behind-the-scenes fool who, look how depressed he is in this picture while everyone else is off partying, because the weight of the kingdom kind of falls on his shoulders, and he's the one that needs to, bear the burdens and put out all the fires, and he's the one that is secretly the power behind the throne. That was the basic hook of the show. I know I used a lot of words to express it, but just show about a court jester keeping things running smoothly in the court is, or maybe we could say, a comedy about a court jester surrounded by idiots who needs to keep the realm from falling apart. Something like that would be just that expression of that core premise, right? And so from there, you have to do a lot of just kind of deduction to figure. So from your core premise, you have to ask, okay, well, who would be, if your show, the core of your show is a person or a job, right? And you have to ask, okay, who's going to have the most difficult time of doing this job? Or who is a person that would be particularly interesting to watch as they try to accomplish this job? So in my case, that's why I picked, he's in a kingdom where he needs to do this constantly, so he's pushed to the very edge of his competence in order to keep the realm from falling apart. So that's just, from that core concept, just using a series of logical deductions and choices, you can use almost math, story math, to figure out, okay, well, who would this one be about? Okay, and what would they need to do, and what would the cast look like? So let's look at some of the basics here. First, we're going to list out the comps, which are going to be, for me, The Tudors meets The Great. It's sort of the world of The Tudors, but with the tone and style and approach, it's kind of a cheeky historical, as we call them. So not entirely accurate. We're not really trying to portray a super clear era of history, but it's mostly we're doing this for fun and to use these archetypes in this world to explicate on an interesting role in society, or an interesting role that has been played by many people over the years. And the show kind of ultimately became an ode to that archetype, to the people who are content to work behind the scenes with no desire for center stage, and they keep things running smoothly even as they're surrounded by idiots. And I think no matter where you fall in whatever political spectrum, you can relate to this idea of somebody's got to be keeping everything together. I don't know who possibly has the skills to keep such a mess together, but somebody is, and this show is an ode to them. All right, so the next things we work out are the pilot and series loglines. So there's 2 loglines for a TV show. A series logline is going to express what we're doing sort of either week by week, if this is what we call a status quo show, or what I call a status quo show. And that's going to be shows where you don't really need to watch them in order, and you can tune in anywhere. Everything from The Simpsons to South Park to Family Guy. A lot of cartoons are like this, and a lot of sitcoms are like that. Most sitcoms are like this, except for The Good Place, which Amanda mentioned, and is kind of a rare example of a premise-based sitcom. But you see those occasionally. But in any case, most of the time, status quo is going to refer, at least how I refer, to shows where you can tune in any week. And that's what Knave is. There is going to, like, in theory, over the years or whatever, the years of show that I'm not going to get, then things would develop and change. But you need to know sort of essentially, what is the thing that we're going to be working on every week? What is the objective going to be on a weekly basis? And it should be a very easy answer to this question. If your show is centered on a job, then obviously the characters are usually going to have goals related to that job, especially if it's something as simple as, I'm a detective and I solve a crime of the week, or I'm a doctor and I have a patient of the week, or I'm a monster hunter and I have a monster of the week. Something like that should just be very, very clear in the series logline. So the series logline for my show, Knave. A manipulative jester pulls the strings to keep things running smoothly in the court of a foolish king. That's the sort of stuff we'll be doing week after week after week for many years to come. I'll get 3 seasons on Hulu, then I'll get canceled. I'll be happy with that. Then pilot is going to be the expression of what happens in just this very first episode. So this is going to sound a little bit more like a movie logline. The fool stumbles upon a conspiracy to overthrow the crown, brewing amidst the night staff of the castle, a plot he must infiltrate and neutralize. So this is where, if you have a thing of the week, and in my show it's essentially the knave, the jester, has a big problem of the week that he needs to solve to keep the kingdom going, then that the pilot logline is gonna specify that. So if your series logline is, a group of alcoholic monster hunters operate in rural Nevada, then your pilot logline might be, when a chupacabra eats his favorite sheep, a farmer enlists the monster hunting duo to go take it down. Something like that. That's just going to say, oh, this is the first monster of the week. Does that make sense? So any questions on just like those basics of series logline and pilot logline? Margie has a question. Go ahead, Margie.
I'm sorry, I was just agreeing with you.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying, yes, I have a question. No problem.
I have a I love how I do get confused about the series versus the pilot logline, only insofar as how much the pilot is the catalyst for the series.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know sometimes the series and the pilot log lines overlap a little bit. I like how yours was a really clear example of, okay, here's the episode of the week for the pilot, and here's the overarching series log line. I don't know. I can't, unless I give you a specific example, it's not gonna, I can't, there's probably not really a easy answer to it, but just when the pilot is almost like, the catalyst of the series, sometimes it's hard to,
You're
so
right,
it's okay if they have a little bit of redundancy.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, if you can find a way to, like, not cover way too much of the same ground. Like, we don't want to just be having them be identical or close to identical.
Right.
But
right.
So you should look to, and the IT crowd is often an example I use of this, right? Where it's like the main two guys are IT workers in the basement of a big office firm. In the pilot episode, they get a new boss, and she's their boss for the rest of the show. And in that case, so the pilot logline would be something like, when she gets demoted down to the IT department, this lady needs to crack her, get her team of reclusive IT experts into line. Something like that might be the pilot logline. And then the series logline would be something like, the IT department at a big company week by week needs to put out the fires and, keep the company from going under. Something like that, where you shouldn't need to have too much overlap, but it's okay if there is a little bit, because sometimes the pilot does catalyze the rest of the show, and it wouldn't really make sense if you didn't do that. So I guess the answer to your question is it's okay if you have a bit of that. Just don't try to not make us feel like we just read the same thing twice.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm playing around with my very first script that you read, the one a while back, the animated. I'm redoing, changing the protagonist, merging two characters into one, totally different launching point. But it's really fun because I know the character really well, but they just merged together.
Sure.
So yeah, I'm gonna share. I'll share it in the logline channel later.
Feel free to post. Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks.
Okay, so we've gone over core kernel or nucleus of the idea, which maybe I could even write down on here if that's helpful. Nucleus. Show about a jester, or we could just maybe say something like a jester, medieval jester, holds the strings in a kingdom. Something like that. That's almost my series logline. We could almost, if we go to the proto-nucleus, it's just show about a court jester, right? And that alone, sometimes if the job itself has a very self-explanatory sort of conflict or story engine to it, then you may not always need to elaborate way more on that. I mean, if it's something like, this is a show about a deep-sea welder, then that could be interesting on its own. We might be like, okay, I might see some of the conflicts that come up there. But if it's like a deep-sea welder discovers there's monsters underwater, then you're going to need to say, your core concept would be something like, it's a deep-sea welder versus underwater monsters. So just make sure that you're getting at what is the basic fun of the premise here. Okay, so then from then on, once you have the comps chosen, which again is this show meets that show, at least one of them should be a TV show. We have decided the time slot, which in my case is 30 minutes, and that's going to be a script between 30 and 35 pages long. For a full hour, that's going to be 60 and 65 pages long. Normally, half hour is going to be for more comedic or cartoon shows. That's not always the case, and there's enough exceptions to that nowadays that does not necessarily need to be true. There's versions of, the only real time slot and mashup that we don't see is hour-long comedy. There's not really hour-long sitcoms. If there's going to be an hour-long humorous show, it's usually going to be a dramedy, something like Shameless, or it's going to have some other element to it, like horror comedy, like Ash vs. Evil Dead, for instance, or something like that that helps us justify the hour-long time slot. But there's just not really going to be hour-long straight comedy shows. Anything else pretty much goes. You can have half-hour drama. There's rare versions of that. That does exist. You can have half-hour action-adventure if you want to. Usually they're going to be animated cartoons if that's the case, but not always. I mean, you can kind of write whatever you want. And because, your pilot is probably not going to get made, you're not going to have a show. This takes years and years of writing dozens of pilots before you get to the point where you have to worry about, is my show actually going to get made or not? You can kind of just go crazy and write whatever you want. The goals are to be reading, writing, and finishing things and moving on. And as long as you're doing those three things, then you're going to be moving along the right track. Where was I with this? Okay, so we have our time slot. I've chosen half an hour for this. A lot of people would probably think this would be a full hour-long show, and in theory, it might need to eventually be. But I thought I'd just try it out and just see if I could pull it off in half an hour, and I liked how it has turned out for the most part. Status quo is going to refer to the continuity format of the show, so you should know if this is going to be something you can come in at any point, which is status quo. Every week it's going to be sort of the same setup, or if this is going to be a premise pilot. So if this was going to be a show where we need to watch them in order to understand, then we would write premise down here instead of status quo. And then we have the genre. Really, this is historical dark comedy, but since dark comedy is already two separate words, I figured it would be clear enough that since this is about a medieval jester, putting dark comedy would clarify, okay, this is going to be not a straight, serious historical costume drama. This is going to be kind of a cheeky, funny one. And then we have our series and pilot logline. Series logline being the thing that we're doing week by week, giving us a broader understanding of what's happening in the show. And then pilot is going to be telling us what is specifically happening in this first episode of TV. You don't need to write up the central theme here, but I just kind of, this is just a sketchbook, so I kind of just put stuff all over the place. I very early on zeroed in on this sort of central theme of this show is going to be a sort of ode to those who stay out of the spotlight and who manipulate things from behind the scenes. Let's look at the cast of characters. And for this, I think I'll need to go to the scene cards. Here we go. So, first of all, most shows have a main character, and it's very rare exceptions of shows that do not have a central character. Even big ensembles almost always have a main character. The only exceptions being really broad ensembles like something like This Is Us, which I haven't actually even seen, but I understand that's a broad ensemble drama, and something like Modern Family. It's like, okay, who's the main character in Modern Family? I don't really know. It kind of is a different one of them week by week. In The Simpsons or something like that, it's like, is the main character Bart or is it Homer? I don't really know. So in true ensemble shows, which you're probably not writing, by the way, so probably don't lean on that. You almost certainly want to pick a main character to focus both your pitching and outlining materials around, but also just the construction of your whole plot. It helps to have a main character a lot. And if you feel like my show doesn't have a main character because I just don't, because I have so many interesting characters I need to get to, you're probably making a mistake, but maybe it is a true ensemble in your case. But it will probably feel unfocused if you don't have a really, really strong emphasis on a main character. Even shows that have huge ensembles have main characters. Lost has like 17 characters in it. Who's the main character? It's Jack. Battlestar Galactica has like 25 characters on it. Who's the main character? It's basically Liadama, right? And then, and in some cases, you can make an argument for multiple people. Is it Lee or is it the Admiral? In The Office, is it Jim or is it Michael? And you can argue either way, but when you're pitching and expressing and explaining the show, usually it helps if you center it on one person. And in the case of The Office, I would probably say it's Michael. It's not Jim. So make sure that you have a main character that's really clearly outlined. And in our case, we know who the main character is going to be. It's the Jester, because that's the whole hook of the show. That's the title. It's the whole reason I wanted to write this is because we wanted a show about a jester, right? So I've written it so I can play this character. In theory, I would like to maybe even try to portray this character if this ever, goes anywhere. And this is, so I've written him to be 30 years old, like I am. He's a wry and cynical comedian who hobbles around the court on arthritic knees, I've written here. So he has a bit of a physical disability, and I've written that because I have pretty bad knee problems myself. They're not as bad as they are in the show, but I wanted to write a character that I knew I could actually play. So I kind of did that for my own sake, but I actually liked the dimension that it brought to the character, and especially the idea that people with physical disabilities would have to find other ways to be powerful in this era, in the past and in history. I found just a fascinating central idea to it. So it all kind of actually just came together well for that. Plus, I could actually play this guy. And then we have we need someone for our main character to have a sort of central relationship with. And in our case, it's going to be the king. So if we're expressing the premise of the show is he must keep things running in the court of a foolish king, well, we need our foolish king. We need a king that is going to have to require the most guidance from the jester. So that's why I've decided on a kind of a drunken blowhard he's like a soccer hooligan after a few drinks. Like, he always wants to fight. He never backs down from a challenge. He's always trying to prove himself. He's actually pretty deeply insecure underneath all of that, but he's kind of just a strong man who wants to, drink with his friends, count his treasure, and conquer his enemies. So he's the kind of person that we would need a lot of guidance to be a good king, and who will cause a lot of problems as the show goes on. And all of that touches on this idea of what we call the story engine, which is not something you can just always really clearly write out, or it's not always something that just has one sort of simple part to it. But a story engine is a combination or a confluence of different factors that are going to make it feel like there's enough fuel in the tank for your show to go on for years and years, right? So your story engine is going to be a combination of your setting, your main character, and the conflicts that are, constantly going to be popping up between those things. So character dynamics are a huge part of story engine. So if we say chemistry teacher becomes a drug kingpin, then that's going to be the trajectory of your character for Breaking Bad. But if we ask what's the story engine, it's going to be like, okay, well, Walt, our chemistry teacher, has teamed up with a street smart but book dumb student of his named Jesse that he's going to tutor to learn how to do all the science that he's teaching him about. And he's going to try to keep him on the right track. So Walter and Jesse are like an essential part of the story engine of that show. And every season of that show, and sometimes multiple seasons, have their own kind of villain. And that villain is going to be an essential part of that story engine too. So Tuco in season 1, or Gus in seasons 2 through 4, or basically whatever it is, those are going to be another really essential part of the story engine. So we need to make sure there's enough there that it feels like this will be enough to create conflict that will fascinate us and entertain us throughout the whole run of the show. So in designing your cast, you want to be thinking of everyone in relation to your main character to begin with, is how I do it at least. So if I have our main character is going to be the jester, he needs to constantly advise the king and keep him on the right track. Well, who's somebody that's going to be on his tail, or that's on the verge of catching him all the time? And then I decided, so we're going to have to, let's make that the queen. That just seemed logical. And if we're going to be having somebody come in that is going to become suspicious of the jester and is going to want to stop him and act as an antagonist to him, I thought it'd be interesting to have that, in fact, be a new queen who's just sort of realizing how much influence that he has. Beyond him, we have the princess, who I decided to have somebody that the knave would ultimately feel that he has to mentor, somebody that he can influence and sort of push her down the right path. So I'm designing all these characters with just different relationships to the main character. We have the person he needs to influence but is getting nowhere with. We have the person that he's kind of afraid of and that is acting as an antagonist to him. And we have the person that he's mentoring and that he actually likes. So if you're trying to think of who are the characters, think of who does your main character really like? Who do they really not like? Who is working to help them? Who is working against them? And just think in terms of those extremes. And you can build out your cast quite easily by doing that. So besides these main kind of core of the royal family and the knave, we've expanded it out a little bit, or I've expanded it a little bit more to include the characters from this week's sort of problem or conflict, which are going to be two servants. So I wanted to focus on the marginalia, as we say, the people on the side of the court, not the sort of protagonists we would always think of. So I wanted to do a story involving a chambermaid and a castle guard. So I've listed them out here too, because they're going to really matter in the pilot. We have Wolfram and Elfwine. And then we have very minor characters that we might list out too. We don't need very many for a half-hour show. You can see this is my entire list of characters for a half-hour show. You don't want to do way more than this, or else we're going to start getting kind of lost. Minor character here would just be the Lord Chancellor, who's the king's accountant and just an overwhelmed buffoon who can't do anything right, and the knave hates him. Okay, that's the cast list, and I hope this is at least clear how the thing, if you take nothing else away from this, just think of who is your main character, and then from there, you can just draw like a circle around them and web off in different directions and say, this is who they like, this is who they hate, this is who's helping them, this is who's hurting them. Just think in those really broad binary terms, and it will help you fill out your world and flesh out, and it'll sometimes force you to make decisions, right? Because at first I was like, why would the knave like anyone here? If he's surrounded by idiots, he would clearly hate everyone. So I need to come up with some kind of character that he would actually like. And the idea of it being the child of the court actually made a lot of sense, because the child is more impressionable and has more room to grow and things like that. So always be thinking relation to main character, and that can really help you fill out a whole cast. And then once you've done that, if you need more characters, then you can do that with your other ones here too. So especially if you're doing a big ensemble, you can say like, okay, who's my second most important character? Who do they like? Who do they hate? And then you can kind of build out that way. There's not really a number of characters that you need for a show. A show can thrive on just 2 or 3 characters. And we've seen examples of that in the past. But typically for a half-hour show, like 5, 6 main characters at the most, probably. Think like your community, something along those lines. It's a complicated ensemble story, but it's still limited to, 5 or 6, or maybe it's 7 main core crew. Arrested Development is another half-hour show with a really big cast, but the core is the Bluth family, and that's going to be like 5 or 6 people. So that's probably a good metric or rule of thumb for half hour. And then in full hour, maybe roughly double that, so maybe like 8 to 10 core kind of characters, but it's almost always better to dig deeper into what you have and to deepen the characters and to dig more into what makes them tick and what makes them interesting than it is to just add character after character for no reason. Okay, so that's how I go about designing and thinking of casts. Logical deductions that are going to be giving your main character the most difficult uphill journey and presenting them with obstacles that feel like they can persist week after week after week. Even if this first one is resolved, then we have to feel like there's room to go and there's plenty of conflict left for him to engage with. So, questions on designing a cast of characters for your show? No questions? Okay, let's continue. So I think the next thing that we will do is look at scene cards, and then we're going to do a reading of the pilot. I think we have enough people here for it. And hopefully this will maybe just kind of show you guys how we go. This isn't perfect. This is the first draft of a pilot that I wrote in 5 or 6 days over the holidays, because I'm trying to enter this into a contest on this upcoming weekend. So a bit of a quicker time frame than I normally do. It's not perfect. It's not its final version, but maybe we can just sort of see how we go from just the very basic of the core idea to the end of our first draft of a script. So let's first look at the scene cards, and I'll show you how I lay these out and what these look like, and then we'll go into a table read. So if while I'm explaining the scene cards, Nacho, do you think that you can maybe just ask in the chat and do like a little poll or something and see who's interested in reading, and then I'll just like maybe just sort out the reading part. I'll be reading for the knave. Go ahead.
Does everyone see where the text chat is? So I'll just do a poll and just see who is to read. And I don't know, do you want the people to read to do like a mic check for you or something so you can hear their voice?
Sure, just a really quick one. But let me get into the scene cards first, and maybe you can, if you can do the most of that in the text chat while I'm going over this next part, that would be great. If not, that's cool. But yeah, just let us know. Raise your little hand. Yeah, somebody just posted a raised hand emoji. There you go. Good idea. Thanks, Scarlett. Okay, so let us know in the chat if you want to read a role in my brand new pilot about the jester. But before we do that, I'm going to go into scene cards. So the first thing is that I just want to show you what scene cards are going to kind of look like. And each one is going to be topped by, I come up with names for the individual scenes, which might sound silly or redundant or unnecessary to you, and it kind of is. But at the same time, because this doesn't show up in the show or on the script, but at the end of the day, it does force you to clarify what the point of that scene is. And if the point of the scene changes, you might find the title no longer fits, and that's a sign to you that you might need to rethink what that scene is for. So I actually do recommend coming up with titles for each of your scenes. And you don't need to be especially artful with them, but just enough that we understand what happens there and what the point is. So I also have labeled the acts in this one. Act 1 is entitled A Strange Time for Jokes. So pages 1 to 2, we can see our first scene is entitled Dire Straits. I'm not going to go over every single scene because we're about to do a reading of the whole episode, but I just want to show you how much to basically include. So this is like 1, 2, 3, 4. This is like 6 sentences-ish per card. It's about a paragraph with some scenes being longer and some being shorter because I had worked out the dialogue a little more extensively for some of these scenes. And also I had kind of been gathering material for this pilot for about a year or 2. So I had a lot of my best lines and best ideas kind of already worked out. But I just want to show you what these scene cards look like. And also I want to also, what am I doing? I want to show you how you can use the Google Docs outlining features to keep all this very neat and lovely looking and very organized, which is especially useful if you're going to be working with other people on your pilot. Then the more organized and efficient your documents look, the better. Can you guys see this? Yeah, you can. Okay, so over here on the left, do you see on the left-hand side of the screen, there is a document outline that is organized by act, and you can click on each of these sections to go to the relevant scene. You can do that by using this heading section on Google Docs. So the biggest headings are going to form these headers here. So this heading 1 is the big one up here. Underneath that, we have the name of each individual scene, which you're going to set to heading 2. And then for the text, you want to set to normal text. And when you do that, it's going to form this nice, lovely little outline with the page numbers next to it. So you're going to estimate how many pages that scene will take. And as we go through these, you might see that some of my cards are not exactly the same as the scenes in the episodes, or in the episode, but you basically have to just do a lot of TV writing and reading to get a sense of how long it will take to do certain moments. Otherwise, you're going to vastly over or underestimate what you need for a scene. But basically, you can think of it as 1 page is a super, super, super quick scene that we have time to do about like 6 or 7 lines of dialogue, and that's it. It goes very quick. It's about a page a minute, but it's not exact, so don't rely on that. 2 pages is like your standard scene, kind of, more or less. And on an hour-long pilot, we could say maybe like, I don't know, 2.5 pages would be your standard scene length or whatever. And then 3 pages is going to be like a long scene. 4+ is going to be one of the biggest and most important scenes in your whole episode. I hope that's super clear. 2 pages is your standard scene length. 3 is going to be like, okay, you really feel like this scene is super important because we're giving more important scenes are usually going to be the longer ones. That's not always true. But like your biggest sequences, things like your big premise scenes or your finale or like a giant action sequence, something like that, you're not going to have room for a lot of 4+ page scenes. So when you're allocating scene lengths on your outlining documents, think most scenes are going to start at 2 pages. You can also have a little cheat sheet I've used before where it's like start at 1 page, then mentally add on a page for, is there a lot of talking in the scene? Okay, add 1 page. Is there a lot of action in the scene? Add another page. Is it concerning or does it follow more than 2 principal characters? Add another page. And if you just use that kind of metric, then you can kind of estimate how many pages it's going to be. But this is mostly just going to take a lot of work and practice from you to learn. Okay, so we can see the different scenes here. This is, the war room scene I knew would be, as you see how much is prepared for this one or how much I had on here. I knew that had to be 3 pages or had to allocate 3 pages for it. So a lot of 1-page scenes are just going to be very quick. And I haven't gone way too into subplots in any of my classes yet so far. I still do plan on doing a class for that soon. But basically, we want to we want to close subplots in the reverse order that they are opened. So we start with the most important one, the A story. And a lot of shows are going to have a B and a C. And if it's a really complicated show, sometimes a D, or if it's insanely complicated, E stories. Basically, you can think of A, B, and C. So our A story is going to be the kind of main problem, and in this case, it's our main problem of the week, which is there is a war going on that has been going on way too long, and the Jester is trying to find a way to stop it to save the kingdom. So that's the A story, and then soon after, in the first act, you want to introduce your B story, and not long after that, your C story. In your first act, if possible, you want to introduce all the main characters, your A, B, and C stories, and by the time that we break into Act 2, we should have a pretty clear sense of we don't need to know exactly where it's going, but we should have a sense of, okay, these are the problems that are on your main character's plate, and this is what their plan to solve them is basically going to look like. Or it could feel like, I have no idea how they're going to solve this, but I'm excited to see. I know what they're dealing with, and as we move into the second act, I'm excited to see how they tackle it. Okay, so we have Act 2 here. Act 2 is called The Night Staff. We have a lot of quick scenes in Act 2, and then in Act 3 we have a longer sequence for the finale. We had the performance sequence, which I think ended up being 3 pages long instead of 2. But overall, the pilot ended up being 35 instead of 32, so I was a little bit off with my estimations. I want to pause and see if we have any questions on scene cards. This is such an important thing that we work with here, and I know this might seem like more planning than you're used to, but I find it's really helpful, and it removes that element of I need to figure out what happens in the scene while you're in the middle of writing, which is one of the main things that slows you down. So the fact that I've been kind of gathering information for this one and material for this one for more than a year, and then I wrote out, what is this one, to like 8-9 pages of just full block paragraphs for what happens on every page, then it made it very easy to write this in less than a week because I had worked out all those issues. So I want to pause and see, do we have any questions on scene cards, how to write them, what to include in them, or what they're used for? Okay, everyone feels like they fully get scene cards? Great. Let's just dive right into the script here. So it looks like we have a couple readers. Let me check the list. All right, we have Hypersprite, McTabby, Scarlet, and Nacho. Is that you volunteering, or is that just you clicking the button to show people where to click?
That's me volunteering.
It is. Okay. Great. And then, so I'm going to read the Jester, the Knave. Let's have, let me bring that list back up 1 sec. Let's have, literally me read, the stage direction. We'll have Nacho read for the king. We'll have Scarlet read for the queen, and McTabby read for the Princess Iris. And then there's 2 more roles if we have 2 more volunteers. If not, I'm just going to have to recast the people that we already have when we get to those points. Do we have 2 more volunteers? Feel free to click in the poll. Do you want to read, Amanda? You're good at reading.
Oh, sorry. Okay, let me see what... I'm not viewing the screen. Hold on 1 second.
That's okay. You could just tell me if you want to read, and I can just give you a role.
Okay, am I being a character?
Do you want to be it?
Yes,
I
do.
Great. Okay. Then why don't you read for Wolfrun?
Okay.
Cool. And then I'll probably cast someone from our group that we already have as Elfline when we get there. Okay. Let's get started. So everybody know the role that they're reading?
Have we casted everything already?
I just did. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
As long as I'm at stage directions, I know where I'm at. Let's go.
Great. Okay. So you don't have to do a great job with this. Don't worry, this is not an acting class or it's not a performance test. So just be as clear and succinct as possible. Just to everyone reading, don't worry, you're not being graded or evaluated or anything like that. We're really trying to pay attention to the story and to remember, like, let me link you the scene cards as well, so you guys can be going through these as we go through the scene, so you can kind of see, okay, that's what he intended the point of that scene to be, and things like that. I think that might just be helpful. So I've linked the scene cards in the chat. If you want to open up that PDF and follow along with us, even if you're not reading, maybe just be thinking, how does this scene accomplish that? And maybe you'll see some differences between the outline and the final one as well. Okay, let's get started. And
wait 1 sec. I just gotta make sure. For the actual script, no, I need to be linked to that. Is it in the chat? I'm looking for it.
Oh, here you go.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. From Act 1.
That's right at the top.
There we go. Okay.
Sorry, could we write down the cast list just to make sure in case anyone forgets who they are?
Yeah, I think, well, who did I cast? So they say they knew who they are. Did I cast Scarlet as the queen? Who was the other reader? McTabby?
I am the princess.
Yep.
Okay, I think am I Stavros?
Yes, you're the queen. Or, sorry, the
Okay,
king. King Stavros.
Got
That's
it.
right.
Okay.
Everybody good?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. And I'll probably have Nacho read for Elfwine as well when we get there, just to give you a heads up. All right, let's get going. So let's read Knave, this historical half-hour dark comedy pilot. Go ahead.
Interior, castle, great hall, morning. A dark medieval court in the unbroken peace of morning. Doves coo in the rafters. Rain taps the roof. A door squeaks. Open and arthritic footsteps shuffle inside. With each limping step, there is a jingle of bells.
So, the Dark Ages.
A match scratches to life in the hand of the knave. 30, a colorfully dressed jester with insomniac eyes.
Or at least the somewhat dismal ones, even in the daytime.
He lights a candelabra. Then, he slouches around the room, lighting the other candles. As servants open the curtains.
'Tis an aptly named era, and a strange time to jest. Some may say it takes a foolish fool indeed to so rudely propose in our bleak time, that there is anything to laugh or even smile about.
The knave limps to the front of the room as 30 corridors file inside. The dining tables file inside the dining tables for breakfast. His audience.
Typos there. Sorry, it should say courtiers, and they sit at the dining tables for breakfast. I think you get the idea. Okay, yes. And yet here we are, armed with our trembling candle flame against the gloom. My lords and ladies, welcome to court. How about a show?
King Stavros, 48, a muscular blowhard who wears his armor everywhere, yawns as he takes his seat. He's deeply hungover.
Something on the quieter side today, fool.
You're in luck, Majesty, that I too am deathly ale-sick from last night's revels, and the show will thus in fact be no good at all. Bad show, everyone. Deepest apologies.
Acting drunk, he stumbles around, knocking stuff over and apologizing, to the chuckle and amusement of the room. Stavros cracks up. He looks over at Queen Alba, 29, icy sharp and miserable, as she takes her seat at his side.
You'll love him. They say he's the best in the realm.
When does he start the jokes?
I think these are the jokes.
Lord Chancellor Ferdinand scoffs at the jester's antics. I'll just voice this guy. Perhaps our new queen might see fit to finally fire this weasel and hire a dwarf or a bard or someone who can hold his liquor.
The knave flops into the seat next to him.
I held quite a bit of it when I waltzed in a tizzy to the Undercroft yestereve, whereupon I found the castle so poorly defended that I could stride into the unlocked wine cellar and drink every flask within. Are you not the Lord Chancellor responsible for the security of the crown? You accuse me... I'm reading both rules now. Excuse me, but... And he does a trick where he... Oh, go ahead.
He does a trick where he seems to vomit streamers and confetti onto the befuddled Lord Chancellor, to his humiliation and the room's great amusement. Stavros guffaws. He checks on his daughter on the rug by the fireplace. Iris, 11, a scrawny and focused girl, is deeply occupied stacking spools of colored yarn. Stavros beckons her to join them. She ignores him. He frowns, troubled. The knave realizes the king is getting distracted. He breaks out of a crowned puppet. A caricature of Stavros himself.
Look here, the point is we're understaffed, the people underfed. The war has emptied our coffers faster than the Lord Chancellor's coin purse in a whorehouse.
He holds up another puppet of a peasant with a pitchfork.
And it's worsening the peasants, brewing unrest day by day.
He proceeds to make the peasant bash the king puppet on the head with his pitchfork to punctuate each word. Stavros re-engages. He finds this hilarious. The knave reaches behind the king's ear, removing a scroll.
Sorry, just telling Nacho, I think he's reading from a previous draft. Thank you, that's the news. And for your daily dose of magic tricks...
He unfurls it. It's a ledger of the kingdom's draining funds with expenditures circled in red.
Over the next 6 to 8 months, King Stavros is going to make all your funds disappear.
Stavros laughs so hard he pounds the table. He truly doesn't even realize he's being criticized. The knave's smile wanes. He's not getting through to anyone. Interior council room, day. Stavros shoos his daughter out of the council chambers and turns to consult his cabinet. Lord Chancellor, Steward, Marshal, Archbishop, and Spymaster at their stone table.
Can't imagine why the rebellion would flourish when things are going so well in my conquest. Frame it as it's our conquest. All of ours. Hasn't that worked before?
The knave hobbles around the edge of the room, examining maps of the war front, dotted with figurines representing armies.
I'm Lord Chancellor. Here to share your expertise. The greatest foe you've ever faced is a spiral fucking staircase. The knave now. Clownish curiosities, sire. What's happening here on the west flank?
Oh, cheer me, please, fool. I've lost 6 retinues to the savages, thanks to these dumb shit generals.
Knave quickly pushes the formations into better position with his marot, a jester's scepter. He then rises before he's noticed and wanders by the council table.
Always telling me the situation is one way, and then later the same day, another update, another general. The situation has developed. Make up your fucking minds.
Councilors mutter their sycophantic agreement.
I
Sycophantic.
sent for all of our generals to simply combine forces, go to the front, and lead the enemy as a team, lead the army as a team. I cannot fathom why nobody has ever thought of this.
A fraught pause. Then, total agreement from the council. Mumbles of genius, your majesty. The king looks proud.
Perhaps an army composed entirely of generals, if they are indeed the key to victory.
Come now, don't be stupid.
I have a license for it, Majesty, but I'm in earnest. Who could see a flaw? 9 times the generals, 9 times the faster war. Much like how 9 women can collaborate to make a baby in just 1 month.
The councilors snicker, but King Stavros doesn't get it. This annoys him. He points his gauntlet at the knave.
You, sidebar.
He gestures him to the side and speaks to him quietly.
You know I love our sidebars.
Me too, fool, but you should know there's nothing I hate more than people are laughing and I don't know why. What are you saying? That there's a free-floating joy that everyone else gets to have, but I'm not allowed because I didn't solve your little riddle. Awful.
Your Grace, if I may.
Please, your job here is to teach me humor. Flaunt it over my head. Keep the politics out. This morning was amazing. Let's have more pranks and insults like that. If you do a strange joke, I'd like you to explain it if we're in private. Okay, if in public, signal me to laugh. Subtly. Jingle your bells or something. Just don't weep.
Maybe not a joke then. How about a game?
He takes a snack tray and piles a bunch of cheese slices on the table in front of him.
Each piece of cheese represents 1,000 gold in our treasury.
He snags a fat dog, Iris's pug, as he runs by on the floor. The knave lowers the pug's hungry face toward the cheese.
And this dog represents the inevitable economic recession.
There's no time for games, fool. Get it together.
The knave deflates. Hope drains from him. Queen Alba watches him suspiciously through the cracked door. The pug gobbles cheese. Interior long gallery, soon after. Pensive, the knave leaves the war council chambers and walks past rows of exquisite paintings. Queen Alba has been waiting for him. She matches his pace.
I notice you do not kneel when your queen enters. May I ask why?
Bad knees, Majesty. I'm afraid I must reserve genuflection for the Pope alone.
That I believe. Yet, what I struggle to believe is that you take such low salary, and by coincidence, the treasury moves 500 gold to your department per month, unaccounted for.
Stage direction.
Shit, where am I? Damn it. She pulls out a ledger of her own, the knave stops. Where am I? I'm sorry.
You're good.
Damn it.
The knave stops.
Interior
Go ahead.
Great Hall? Oh, yeah.
You inspired me to perform an audit, and it seems you spend more time skimming coin and whispering in my husband's ear than playing flutes with your nose.
I have a performing toad if you'd like to meet him.
What I'd like is to know what you really do here. They say you're indispensable. Why? Do you juggle?
Responsibilities, Your Grace. And apples.
Cut me in, or I expose you for embezzlement.
Cut you in, you're the queen.
And
Why do you need money?
so I can leave. Look around.
But you've only just arrived. Don't you see that leaving would dissolve our only alliance?
How do you expect me to stay in a kingdom that is set to fall apart at any moment?
I'll cut you in. Don't leave. This realm might seem in dire straits, but I assure you, it will not fall.
I'm sorry. Where the fuck are we? What page?
At the bottom of page 7.
Oh, shit. That's why.
He crosses.
She crosses her arms, raising an eyebrow.
She crosses her arms, raising an eyebrow challengingly. Sorry.
And you do assure me this isn't one of your little jokes? Those are why they keep you around, no?
He evaluates her and concludes that he can't trust her.
They keep me around, my lady, because your husband loses his absolute shit at my puppet shows.
Interior Great Hall, night. The knave makes puppets bash each other on the head, doing funny voices. The king loses his shit laughing. The show concludes. The king applauds, as do the gathered courtiers dining at the long tables.
Now, under your seats, you will find some fun discussion questions on the major themes of today's piece.
The audience is already distracted by feasting, wine, and conversation. The knave sighs. He packs up and prepares to retire. He nods goodnight to Iris, who sits nearby.
Your Grace.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, we just say that to mean hello or goodbye at times.
Really? I've got to write that down. Is there a book on this that I'm supposed to get sometime?
No, dear, life is awful like that, and you've just gone through an important rite of passage for realizing it.
She wanders to a window and looks down at the village below.
Such a strange place, Cold. I'd much prefer to be out among my people, making a real difference. That would show Father how great a princess I am and shall be.
You'd go shoulder to leprous shoulder with the wretched poor.
They're not so bad. I wish people wouldn't speak of them that way. They're hungry and they need help.
He softens as he realizes that she's serious.
Do you really want to help?
Not to worry. I addressed the hunger issue already. I took my servants out to the village square and handed out 6 massive cakes. Because I'm the only one who gets anything done around here.
The knave considers this.
You're the master of revels, are you not? Write this down, knave. I want you to set up a big gift for the peasants. We're going to spend the crown's money to spend far and wide for the best performers and acrobats and musicians and have a giant show to cheer everyone up. Don't care how much it costs.
You should care what it costs.
And we are to leave out hats for donations to recoup the costs then. That will be all. I want it done in 3 days' time, so it concludes on my half-birthday.
Knave sighs and starts glumly writing this down.
Anything else?
I want a pet fox.
She scampers off. Beneath the specifications for the upcoming performance, the knave writes, reddish-brown dog, lanky.
You think you want a pet fox?
Interior knave's chambers, night. The knave stares with sleepless eyes at a stack of expense reports from the upcoming show. On top is a sketch of an elaborate ice sculpture. He sighs and blows the candle out. Later, he languishes in bed, unable to sleep. He stares at a stack of plates on the shelf and the poles he spins them on. There's an infuriating drip of water in the hall. He rolls over, then once again, clamps a pillow to his face. Interior castle corridors, night. The knave, wearing plain clothes now, wanders the castle in an insomniac daze. He passes a wall which is leaking rainwater through a big hole and forming a huge puddle.
Hello? The walls are leaking. Anyone?
He looks around. No servants in sight. This place is going to be shit. The knave collapses onto a stone bench by a staircase. Wolfrun, 48, a rosy-cheeked Irish chambermaid, emerges from a privy carrying her scrubbing tools. She smiles at the knave.
Didn't recognize you at first without your bells and all that.
Precisely the
Bells
idea,
are-
Lady Wolfrun.
Oh, lady tonight, is it?
He bows and she performs a mock royal courtesy. A burly guard, Alfwine, 37, wanders by, tipping his helmet in greeting.
Nacho, can you get this one?
Hell of a show earlier, fool. You see this, Wolfrun? He roasted the king so clever-like, the lummox didn't even notice it.
Did he now?
Alfwine pulls a flask, offers him some. The knave drinks.
Yes, I've got the best job in the world to roast my terrible boss, but it's wasted on me. He has the worst ear for humor I've ever seen. I'm just trying to avoid replacement by a bard or a monkey or some other fucking thing. Do you know how many monkeys I've had to assassinate to keep my position?
No.
And you won't.
Oi, you do keep good secrets.
Collecting secrets is my hobby, Elfwine, the way a boy gathers skipping stones at a riverbank, scanning with great patience for the angle that will make the biggest splash.
Groundskeeper descends the staircase. She pauses, gets the servant's attention, and flashes her hand in front of her lantern twice. She then proceeds to the basement. The knave notices, but is too tired to put energy into decoding it. He glances over at Wolfrun and Alfwine, who are suddenly deep in whispered conversation. They look up at him.
Since you can keep secrets and all, fool, can you settle a little, just for fun, secret bet with me and your humble chambermaid real quick?
You use the servant's entrance, no? I've seen you. I know I have.
Yes, I do, most days. Why?
Right. There's a typo there, Wilfrin.
Thank you.
Just so you note it. Right. How would you like to come to a quick little private meeting with us right now?
She gestures her head down the steps to the wine cellar. The knave looks curious and exhausted, but mostly curious. Interior wine cellar night. The knave follows Wolfrin and Alfwine into the wine cellars, where they come to a gathering of 20 members of the castle night staff, standing in a loose ring and whispering.
Please welcome the fool.
The attendees nod, mumble hello, and lift cups of wine. The knave is baffled. He notices full-size ice sculpture of Princess Iris. It's melting a little.
You're the ones who have been meeting down here. All these torches are melting my ice sculpture. What's this about?
We're here to decide what is to be done about the king.
The knave hides it well, but panic builds inside him.
Why don't you tell us your name, your grievances with the tyrant, and I suppose your favorite food and preoccupation, if you like?
Well, I'm your local jokesmith. I have plenty of grievances with the king, and my main preoccupation these days, it seems, is...
Alfwine pops a champagne cork, and the knave snatches it from the air before it destroys the ice sculpture.
using one problem to solve another.
After a moment of drip, drip, dripping sounds, he pops the cork into the hole in the wall, as if plugging a leak in the sinking ship. He scans the room, deep in thought.
All right, let's. I'm just going to pause really quick just to point a couple things out. So first acts in half hour should be about 10 pages usually if you have a cold open. I don't have a cold open, so I've pushed this up to 12 pages, and most acts are about that long. The last thing that I want to mention is does somebody want to list out what the A, B, and C plots are?
Hey.
Okay, well, the C plot is the girl doing her show. Go ahead. Someone else can say another one.
The A plot is the knave and his shenanigans with the, like, he's trying to, like, with his chambermaid and shit, and he's, like, the secrets. I'm sorry, I was reading this.
That's okay. So, yeah, the A story is involving this plot, right? So, basically, the A story is the knave is trying to save the kingdom because it's going to shit because the king has let this war go on and on and on, and they're out of money. So that's the A story.
Oh.
And then the B story is Amanda mentioned it as the C, and it really kind of, honestly, I might change it so this happens a little earlier to make it more clearly the B. I would say that the B story is he's trying to set up and run this show for the princess who wants to make a big gift to all the peasants. And I would call his conflict with the queen the sort of C story for this episode. It's sort of more of what we call a runner, which is either going to be a recurring joke or a recurring conflict throughout the episode. And go ahead.
The girl is the B. I was thinking B and C are just two subplots. I forgot that the C is even a different level. So yeah, B. The girl, the little girl is definitely a big side plot. So.
Right. So if we break this down to just characters, A story is going to be Knave versus Stavros. B story is Knave versus Iris, and C story is Knave versus Alba. Okay, let's move into Act 2.
You're giving a great performance. I almost like paused just to look back for a while and be like, "Whoa, are you doing expressive?" Whatever.
Thank you.
Let's go.
I've played a lot of D&D.
Finished. Okay. Interior wine cellar night. We rejoined the night staff candlelit meeting with the knave sitting on a barrel and fidgeting with a metal spring. Wolfrin stands on a box in the middle, making a speech.
And with the crown wasting all its money and our boys all abroad fighting over the channel, there's no one to protect the roads. I don't know if you've noticed, but they're crawling with wild boars.
The crowd nods and mumbles in agreement.
So, I rest my case, and I'd like to keep things civil. No one has to die. I think we put up a list of reasonable demands for the king.
The crowd moans and disagrees. Wolfrin falters.
Demands to... Come on now. Wait. Demands to... Come on now. It's the most peaceful way.
Alfwine steps forth from the crowd, booing. He's half drunk from drinking mugs of ale with his other guards.
Boo! I say we're done with peaceful ways. Who agrees with me? The system's broken.
The crowd jeers and agrees.
Aren't you sick of getting shoved around by rich bastards upstairs? The only way to fix it is to throw a rock in the gears and just see what happens. I say we kill him!
A few cheers this time, scattered applause. Wolfrin looks desperately to the knave for help. He dismounts the barrel and walks deliberately into the center of the group alongside Alfwine.
You know, I've been spending my sleepless nights in the alchemist's tower as of late, and he's shown me this marvelous trick.
He untwists a spring into a straight line, then heats over a torch flame.
He showed me that when heat is applied...
The straight wire recoils into its original sprig shape.
A spring returns to its original shape. In the flames and chaos of sudden change, it becomes easy to fall into old habits and proven mistakes. A sudden coup will throw the realm into yet another unsustainable war.
Are we to have no justice, then? What of the elite's conspiracy? Keep us poor at every turn.
Look, yes, you're correct that corrupt elites are pulling the strings, but there are so many strings, and the puppeteers are drunk. Thus these strings tangle and snap all the time. It leads to a very chaotic and terrifying puppet show, even more so from the wings, believe me.
You can't tell me the system ain't broken.
Any system is only as good as the ones who constitute it. Is the king a moron? Yes, but he can be guided. They all can. You must believe that as I do, or we have no hope.
No hope? Boo!
He eggs on the crowd until they start booing as well.
Boo! This silver spoon bastard is loyal to the king. I misjudged you, fool. You ain't one of us at all.
Elfwine draws his sword and points. Two guards emerge from the shadows at the edge of the room and seize Wolfrin and the knave by their arms. The knave sighs as he's lifted up. The spring falls to the floor, still curling back into shape. Exterior, edge of the woods, night. Elfwine and 5 of his armed supporters, guards and cooks, march the knave to the edge of a gully, swords to his back.
You're being ridiculous. I have seen this happen before. You can't play out your rebellion now. The power vacuum which follows, it will mean scarcity, famine, death.
The knave turns around, his hands raised, as Elfwine holds a sword to his throat and prepares to cut it.
You've seen this before.
Of course I've seen this. Kings come and go. I remain. In the reign of 3 separate kings, I have seen just as many rebellions. They failed. Ask me why.
What?
Timing. Now I have made note of the peasants' grievances, and if you let me go, I will bring these matters up with the king in a more agreeable way than some list of demands. He'll never back down from a threat or a challenge.
Why would you do that? You're just the jester. It's not your job.
It actually is.
Elfwine's armed lackeys turn to consult him. He considers for a moment before gesturing to lower their swords. The knave straightens his tunic indignantly.
Fine. You have until the end of tomorrow to change his mind and get him to address our concerns. And if you breathe one word of our involvement to anyone...
Impalement, beheading, yes. I was tortured for a time, so you'll understand if threats like these slide right off. Good evening.
He strides off. Then he stops and turns back.
And might I add that my cap and merote are not simply to look funny. They are a crown and scepter denoting my own sort of authority.
What are you even saying?
The knave stares daggers.
Don't fuck with the fool.
Interior knave's chambers early. The knave collapses back in a bed. After a moment, he releases a deeply held breath and struggles through the early stages of a panic attack. He breathes deeply, calming himself down. He glances at a scroll which appears to feature his to-do list. Organized show... Fuck, never mind.
No, that's right.
Oh, okay. Organized show for peasants in 3 to 2 days. Acrobats, choreography, musicians, decorators, securities, art sculptures, prevent rebellion, hold realm together. There's a knock at the door.
Sir, the acrobats are here. They need to know where to stand.
The knave rubs his eyes. Exterior castle gardens, morning. Back in Cap and Bells, the knave strides out to the gardens where a stage has been built. 3 musicians tune up lutes and harps on the stage, while 5 acrobats do warm-ups. Iris and her bedraggled handmaidens join up to the knave.
This was supposed to happen in the town square for everyone. How can this be the bridge between us and the peasants if we hold it behind the garden walls?
The safety concerns made performing in town impossible. I had to relocate and limit the number of attendees. I do apologize, Majesty. Shall you ever forgive me?
Yes, if you will organize and direct the show yourself.
He stuffs a loosely bound script into his hands. The knave looks up at the acrobats and musicians, waiting expectantly.
Are you absolutely sure you don't want to postpone, Princess? The costs are, after all, racking up.
The people need help, knave, more than we need some silly gold. Oh, in the finale, he absolutely must do a flip off the springboard.
The knave evaluates the acrobat she's pointing at. The man is a 300-pound circus performer. Iris walks off to amuse herself elsewhere. The knave numbly browses the princess's scattered diagrams and instructions when the houndmaster approaches with a dog on his leash.
You ordered a fox.
He looks down at the reddish-brown dog, painting in the sun. It does not look very much like a fox. He takes the leash. The houndmaster walks off with a shrug. The knave looks to the stage, noting a trapdoor in the floor. On stage, later. The knave stands about the set, making marionettes dance on long strings alongside the rehearsing actors.
Very good. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, wait for your mark.
King Stavros and Queen Alba walk up, arm in arm, followed by many guards and servants at a respectful distance.
What's this all about? I thought this was my daughter's production.
It was, Lord, but it was handed off to me. Maybe you'll like a preview.
He rings a bell. The actors and acrobats take their marks. The musicians twist their tuning knobs and prepare.
This piece concerns a tyrant king so self-centered that he could not see his own salvation.
Ha!
The actors, in face paint, men doubling as women, perform a comical pantomime of the events the knave describes.
He crushed his enemies, conquered every foe, and yet the Lord spent so much gold on conquest that his marriage fell to ruin.
On stage, the actor portraying the queen flicks away her wedding ring. The actor playing his daughter turns away from him in disgust. The actor playing the king looks devastated.
And his realm alongside it. For all his victories, his people hated him. When rebellion finally came, he was caught and exiled, thus ending his reign forever.
And this is a comedy?
I'm laughing at those nitwits who doubted their ruler when he was clearly winning. Nice work, fool.
They start to walk away. The knave drops his marionettes and hobbles painfully down the ladder to follow them.
I actually think I agree with the Queen. Does it not perhaps need a happier ending?
The knave follows the king and queen with great difficulty.
This show is supposed to cheer everyone up, after all.
Don't change a thing. I see a bit of myself in him, to be honest.
Really?
Sure I do. The total dedication to victory. It's wish fulfillment all the way down. I think Iris can learn a lot from such a role model, should she ever pluck her head from the clouds.
The knave eyes Alba, and she stares back with a deadened gaze. She suddenly rubs her fingers together in the money sign.
My lord, if I may, we had to move this performance to the garden due to the risk of assassination by the peasants. That's where we are.
Let them come. Been itching for a good fight, and we may as well have it all out at once.
At that point, he probably also pulls out a sword and, whacks it through a bush or something. Do you not think the lesson of the piece comes down to sustaining total war and sustaining a kingdom on the brink are incompatible? A new policy that would limit one in favor of the other would...
Your job is not to propose policy. It is to jest.
Then I suggest it.
I'll deal with this, husband. We will reconvene at prayers.
Stavros nods mildly, his mind already elsewhere. He goes back inside the castle, leaving Alba with the knave. She crosses her arms and examines him challengingly. He looks glum. He tosses her a bag of gold coins. She opens and counts it.
And what were you doing wandering the darkened halls last night?
Making inquiries into the establishment of a liaison office to field the poor's concerns and devise solutions that work with the crown budget.
No, you weren't.
But imagine.
I'm curious how you did a lot the funds, considering my husband just committed to another year of war.
The knave's expression twists with pain.
A whole year? I was hoping maybe this year we could fix the leaky walls. Or fix something. Now I can't even pay the acrobats.
I suppose you'll just have to move some more numbers around. You ought to take a bit extra for yourself.
He softens and surprises herself by showing actual concern.
Get out while you still can.
Alba enters the castle, leaving the knave pondering. The exterior garden stage. The knave wanders back to the stage and climbs the scaffold behind it. He takes up his usual position with the marionette strings. The sound of his heartbeat grows louder, louder. He shuts his eyes and takes a deep breath. The heartbeat fades. He lets the breath out. The actors and musicians take their places and look up at him, waiting for their cues.
Let's begin.
The music starts. First, a fast-paced tune from the viol, a deep-voiced medieval precursor to the violin. Soon, it's joined by a flute and harp, and they build in intensity. Flash to an extreme close-up. The knave's gloved hands spin and balance a plate on a long stick. Interior dungeon night. The knave bursts through the door into a neglected part of the dungeon where Wolfrin is imprisoned. She leaps up as he enters and does Alfwine, sitting guard in the dim torchlight.
All right, who have you got?
3 rebel guards spring forward, drawing swords and leveling them at the knave. He limps forward, unafraid.
Meaning what?
Extreme close-up. The knave's hands spin another plate on a stick. He keeps the first going, balancing them carefully.
It means I'm starting to realize that holding a mirror to man's darker nature at times only reveals how very fond he is of it.
What?
And we return to dungeon. The knave pushes aside the tip of the guard's sword.
It means I'm going to review your candidates for new king tonight.
And back to Act 3.
Yeah, let's just keep going on through. Hope you guys are following along and enjoying this okay. We have just a couple minutes left. We'll just run a little bit over our end time. We only have, 10, 12 pages to go. So let's just keep on going.
Yeah. Act 3. Interior dungeon night. The knave sits with Alfwine in a disused cell, along with 3 conspirators, watching candidates come to the center and make their case. The knave takes notes. Alfwine doesn't. First up is the castle's greasy chef named Halsbury, 54. He's still in his apron, hands dusted with flour.
Go ahead, Nacho. Why don't you take this guy too?
Roast pumpkin and glazed lamb on Fridays. No more of that radish shit. We ought to import the good German beer as well. So I'd end the trade embargo there. That's pretty much it.
So more of a menu revision than a platform of policy.
Platform of what?
The knave raises his brow at Alfwine. They sidebar as Halsbury shrugs and returns to the pool of other candidates. Chefs, gardeners, cupbearers, and a few palace guards.
People are angry. They don't care about policy right now. They want change. They want to rattle spears and shake things up.
Why on earth can you not see that this will take everything you have? Safety, food?
Not if we win. And we will. There's more of our people than there are of his. We're organized. We're armed. We're pissed off.
Well, believe it or not, well, all that might be great for revolution. A stable regime requires a bit more.
He thinks for a moment and recalibrates.
Look, if you're running this show, why don't you just put yourself forward as the new king instead?
Alfwine chuckles, then looks to his fellow guards. Then he really thinks about it, screwing his face up in deep thought.
Maybe I will.
Could pull the crossbow trigger yourself, too, to cement your rule.
Yes, that's not a bad idea.
No one would dare dispute the reign of a king who so boldly and publicly slew the previous. They'd think him...
Unhinged.
Unhinged, yes.
I like it.
Of course.
I killed the king, and my lads swoop in to kill the remaining loyalists, execute the royal family, put me on the throne. What do you say to that, lads?
The guards present cheer and rattle spears on their shields. In the neighboring cell, Wolfram looks miserable.
Amanda?
Oh, do I have a line? Oh, I thought I looked. What page are we on?
She says, I just wanted to fix the leaky walls at the bottom of 24.
Oh, I do have one line. I just wanted to fix the leaky walls.
Stage
The
direction.
knave offered
Yeah.
a flask of water through the bars, along with a look of pained solidarity.
Thank you. Who's reading our stage direction?
Alright, bottom of 24. I just want to fix the leaky walls. The knave offers her a flask of water through the bars, along with a look of pained solidarity. Exterior castle, balcony, night. King Stavros drinks wine and plays cards by himself on his balcony, staring into the night. The knave passes by and glances out the door at him.
Is everything all right, Majesty?
King Stavros sighs and nods, but it's clearly not. The knave dawdles outside and leads on the railing.
You ever gamble, fool?
Not with money.
The king pours him wine and he sips it.
When you're deep enough in the hole, it starts to seem like winning is the only way out. And it feels so close. But it has for years now. I don't want Alba and Iris to think I'm a loser. I just need to win the war to earn back the money I've lost on it.
But Lord, at what cost?
They watch Iris roll a hoop along a parapet, alone, dejected.
You're so busy with these campaigns, you don't have any time to spend when it matters most. She feels this.
Aye. I've noticed that she's been a bit distant.
If you end the war, you'll have plenty more time and money to spend with her. She doesn't care if you conquer some heathen's lord. She needs a father, a protector, and so does the realm.
True enough.
You're a good commander, but do you want the bad news? The realm is on the verge of collapse, and no matter how much you conquer, soon you will leave your heir a smouldering ruin. I think that's what's niggling at your mind. It doesn't sit well with the good father in you more than anything.
Stavros drunkenly hugs the knave, overly emotional.
This is why you're my best friend, fool. Best friend in the world.
Yes, Majesty, as you say.
They continue hugging.
I'll
The king will keep
end the
going.
war. Just don't tell anyone it was my idea. Right?
Really?
He's stunned into speechlessness. Holy shit.
Might I get that in writing?
The king collapses into his chair, falling asleep.
Surely, after just one more drink.
He's snoring already. The knave stares at him, feeling a rush of conflicting emotions. They can't kill him now, can they? Exterior Castle Gardens, night. The knave bustles into the garden where 10 conspirators sit on the viewing benches before the stage. They lift their torches and pull swords as he arrives. He pays no heed.
I've got him just inches away from ending the war and healing the nation. Where's Elfwine?
Elfwine wins and loads a crossbow at the edge of the stage.
You're too late, fool. Gears are in motion. Momentum's too high.
The knave awkwardly climbs the steps to the stage.
That is ridiculous. You could release Wolfram and walk away, all of you, at any moment.
I think the fact is that people are ready for a change. And I'm happy to be the face of that. That all right with you? Or are you going to be a problem?
The knave thinks. He settles grimly on a course of action. He pursues his lips, then gives Elfwine a resigned smile.
Very well, Elfwine. You've won this one. If you must proceed, the finale of the show is marked by 3 blasts of the trumpet.
We intercut between the two rehearsals. Show rehearsal, morning. Tomorrow's final dress rehearsals for the show. This time in full costume, the knave operates his puppets from behind the scenes, overseeing and directing from afar.
On the first, I suggest you draw arms and make ready.
The trumpet player blasts his instrument. Assassination rehearsal, night. Taking us back to the last night, the knave plays a trumpet, cueing assassins in the audience to draw and practice Russian guard positions that he has marked with X's on the brick.
On the second, your chums in the audience will overpower the guards.
The knave blasts his small trumpet again. Show rehearsal, morning. The knave shuffles around the garden as the dancers and the actors in the finale push the springboard into place on stage. The brightly dressed 300-pound acrobat warms up behind it. The knave nudges a guard, motions for him to move elsewhere, and swipes away the chalk X on the stones with a shoe. The trumpet player takes a deep breath, prepares to blow.
And on the third...
The actors all bow, revealing the 3 empty reserved seats for the royal family. The knave motions for them to go lower. One last trumpet blast rings out.
We shall play out our celebration's true spectacle.
Assassination rehearsal night. A crossbow bolt twangs into the king's empty chair. Interior knave's chambers day. The next day, the knave vomits into a chamber pot sitting on his bed. He's pale, sleepless, and miserable with anxiety. He stands, swishes matter from a flask, and spits it. He collects himself, looking into a mirror as he puts his cap and bells on. He cinches them tight. Jingle. Exterior castle gardens day. Guards shepherd a small group of 20 bewildered peasants into the gardens. Iris cues the musicians and rushes to the guests with a tray of light refreshments.
Welcome, one and all.
She starts handing out snacks and pulls out a checklist.
Now, I want to make sure this is fairly represents the kingdom, so we ought to have 9 men, 11 women. There should be 3 lepers. Can the lepers raise their hands? Or whatever they've got.
Audience. Courtiers gather at the edges of the wooden stands to watch as the filthy peasants file to their seats. They gaze about with an odd combination of awe and discomfort. The chef, Halsbury, now wearing a hood and cloak over his chef's apron, makes eye contact with the 8 armed conspirators among the courtiers. They clench their jaws with nerves, hands tight on the handles of their concealed knives. Dungeon. Wolfram lies on the dingy prison bed. Her wall starts leaking again. She sighs and rubs her eyes with worry. Stage. The knave stands at the edge of the stage, spinning his plates as a warm-up show. He catches them gracefully, to the crowd's applause. Time to begin.
Thank you, thank you. The hard part, of course, isn't so much spinning them, it's catching them before something breaks.
He eyes the king, the queen, the princess, the conspirators. Under the stage, Alforin crouches with his crossbow, clutching it tight to his chest. He gets distracted by his reflection in a tilted mirror, and despite his nerves, takes the time to pose as if for a portrait. God damn, he thinks he looks cool.
The lesson you might take from our story tonight is that it's never quite too late to give up halfway through something if it's starting to seem like a bad idea.
Stage. The exhausted knave takes one last deep breath, summoning the courage and energy for what must be done.
I want you all to sit with that for a minute before you do anything else. And a random Sun Tzu quote for you as well. Tactics without strategy is the noise before defeat. All right? Right. How about a show?
Applause swells. Iris claps loud and most enthusiastically. The king looks pleased to see that. Pre-lap, the first trumpet blast. Audience soon after the finale of the show. Halsbury, soaked with sweat, jittery with nerves, pulls a kitchen knife from his sleeve. The nearby 8 assassins in the crowd pull their blades with the quiet shuck of metal. Above the stage, the knave watches with precise focus as the assassins shuffle towards the guard posts, finding only confused courtiers instead. The conspirators glance around for help, flummoxed. The knave makes his puppets dance. The second trumpet, a higher note, more intense. Building! Stage. The large acrobat readies himself to push the springboard. King Stavros is at the edge of his seat. Queen Alba studies the knave carefully, all her focus on him. The knave nods to the acrobat with cool resolve.
Be sure to hit your mark.
The acrobat begins to run toward the springboard, and with a flick of the knave's marionettes, the final trumpets blast. The dancers bow in unison. The acrobat leaps and jumps. Alfwine bursts from the trapdoor, aiming the crossbow over the dancer's back straight at the king's beaming face.
Here's what you get for.
The huge acrobat crushes the trapdoor. Ta-da! This smashes Alfwine's forearms. He drops the crossbow with a howl of pain, the shot twanging into a hedge. Giants spring into action, drawing swords, unhooding and arresting conspirators. The Lord Chancellor Ferdinand removes Halsbury Hood. The chef panics and stabs with his knife. The crowd of peasants seems to think it's part of the show. They burst into applause, watching the Lord Chancellor stumbling onto the stage with the knife in his chest in what appears to be a dramatic death scene. Iris and King Stavros cheer along with everyone else. The Queen stares at the knave, realizing that what he's done. She's slightly revolted and a little impressed. The knave's wry gaze flickers to the camera.
One problem to solve another.
Exterior, Castle Valley, the next day. Guards drag a broken-armed Alfwine past the bakehouse, the granary, the stables, and out of the central muddy field.
Let it be known that I die as a patriot, a hero, and a casualty of our broken, corrupt establishment.
The knave waits by the executioner's block.
Right, I was hoping you might actually repent and name your conspirators rather than leave all that for me to suss out. I'd really like to catch up on sleep.
Alfwine spits in his face.
Traitor, you're a pet to them. Go sleep in your cage. It's a matter of time until you're the one on the block, fool.
The knave wipes his face and sighs as they drag Alfwine to the block, and we hear the thunk of the axe. Next, the guards drag along Wolfrin, which catches the knave off guard. He rushes to her side and gently tugs her sleeve.
Wait, no, not this one. We'll have somebody else who wants to read this card. Amanda, go ahead and read this card. Oh wait, no, you're reading you're reading Wolfrin. That's right. Nacho, read this card.
Yeah.
Can I read card?
Go
Okay.
ahead.
King's orders.
Oh, okay, sure.
Oh,
You're fine. Fool's orders. Leave her. She just wanted to help. She's a sane and kind person. Believe it or not, we do slip through the cracks.
did she participate in a conspiracy to usurp the king?
Oh my god, who hasn't at some stage? We're on our third king of the decade.
He pulls Wolfrin aside.
How is it alright?
She wipes tears from her eyes, clutching a small rosary to her chest. She summons the strength for a smile.
Oh, I wasn't never gonna change nothing, was I? I'm just not the type.
History books are full of people who don't belong in them.
He smiles and reaches out for his hands. He takes it, suddenly fighting back tears too. He can't believe it. He can't believe this.
But you're the kind of person who changes things. It's why we need you. Now you'll speak up for us, won't you?
He can't think of what to say. The guards pull her away and drag her to the block. She goes with tragic acceptance. The knave turns away, devastated. The axe funks again.
Sorry, are you lost? Or is stage direction lost? We're at the bottom of 33.
I heard a weird sound. Maybe it was
What happened
literally me's mic. Can you hear us? Literally me?
Yeah, there.
There you are.
Roach.
Roach?
Oh.
There's a roach on my wall.
Oh, on your wall.
I
Okay.
don't know where the fuck it's coming from.
Okay, well,
But it's huge. Oh.
do you want us to swap to a different reader, or what do you want to do?
No. Yeah, I think I got. I don't know. I think I think I should tell someone about this.
Okay.
It's
Well,
probably a good situation to tell someone about.
okay.
Interior. Prince,
sorry.
go ahead,
Oh,
Amanda.
yeah, go ahead. Someone else go. I'm
I'll
sorry.
read it.
I'll be
Okay.
right back.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Amanda.
I'll read it. I don't know mine, so.
You're good.
Interior, Princess's Chip Day. Iris plays with toy soldiers on her bed. The knave passes by her open chamber door with a look of dull shell shock. He stops at his own door and finds his bag of coins, the ones he gave the queen, tacked to the wood, waiting for him. He pulls the bag down, counts the coins, and might even smile if he had the energy. The queen is going to stay for now.
Who?
He remembers where he is and steps into the princess's room. He has none of his usual pomp and goofiness.
Did you find the show to your liking, Princess? Assassination attempt and killings aside.
You were right. It was too expensive and dangerous, and just a disaster. I never would have thought the Castle Night staff would attempt such a thing. Don't we treat them well enough?
Makes you think, doesn't it?
It hardly makes sense. But I suppose I learned... I don't know. Never mind. You can go on to bed if you want. Thank you for trying.
She turns back to her toy soldiers. The knave lingers.
What did you learn?
Well, even when we have everything we want, I suppose at times we crave struggle and conflict, if for nothing else than to remind us what the hierarchies are and why they are in place. Anyhow, I would like chocolate cake for breakfast, knave. Please see to it. Good night.
The knave is taken by surprise. He thinks, nods, then walks away. Before he reaches the door, he turns and painfully genuflects to the princess.
Your Grace.
Your foolishness.
The reddish-brown dog and the pug sleep soundly by the fire. Interior castle court night. In the dark, empty throne room, the knave shuffles between the candlesticks, snuffing them out. His bells jingle with each step. One candle remains, the one by the thrones. He doffs his cap and flops in the king's seat, finally ready for some sleep. A goblet and pitcher of wine rests on his side table, and he pours himself a drink. Then he pours one more.
Here's to us.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're good. Here's to us, Lady Wolfram, the human marginalia, content to direct from the wings. I think we've earned our rest.
Boom! The doors fly open, and King Stavros, his equally drunken marshal, and two generals stumble in, bellowing and joking and whacking each other with swords. The knave rises.
Off to bed, fool. Since I ended the war, we're going to have a four-way duel. And whoever wins gets to decide where we invade next.
The knave eyes the open door, then eyes the king. He summons a deep breath, then lets it out with a slight shake of his head.
No. No sleep for the foolish. Too much to do. My lords, before you proceed...
He puts on his cap and bell, but pulls out his merit. Is it merit? Is it merit?
I think it's Marote, yeah.
Marote? Okay, Marote. And dredges up an exhausted smile.
How about a show? All right, thank you guys. This took a while. God, it does take a long time to read even a half-hour script, doesn't it? Anyway, we're a little over our time.
I know.
Go ahead.
It's a long time.
It
Takes a long time. It's like double for some reason. I don't know why.
Sure. It's all good though. So we're a little over our time. Sorry for that. Normally I try to cut off no more than just 5 minutes after the class start. But thank you everyone who did take part in this and who read through this. We won't have time to do a full talk back or anything at the moment. But I wanted to mostly answer questions that you guys had, just in the spirit of this class, which again is an Inside the Writer's Room class. The goal was to examine everything from the nucleus of the show, building that out into a logline, building that out into story beats, expanding that into the scene cards, and then even further expanding that into a full script. So I hope, if nothing else, this has just given you a look at every single step of the process, taking you through from just the smallest possible expression of the idea to the full, and this isn't finished, this is just the first draft of this script. but at least to having a version on the paper that, there's no placeholders in it. It says the end at the end. This is like a draft that people can read. So I want to just open the floor for questions as to like mostly not so much as to story elements. If we have more questions as to like the process or the steps or how do we interweave and conclude subplots or questions like that about the craft of writing this more so than the content as much, you're free to. Oh, I hope it didn't switch my mics there, did it? No, we're good. You're free to, if you want to leave thoughts or questions that you had in the chat as well, you can. But let's just open the floor and see what would you guys like to know based on anything we've talked about today or anything in the script.
Could I ask what maybe changes you came up with as you were writing that kind of diverged a bit from your scene cards?
Yeah, sure. So the idea of the queen threatening to expose the knave for embezzlement was not originally part of my subplot in the C story, and I actually had to add that in to amp up the intensity of that conflict a little bit more. I mean, just having her go, "I'm onto you," doesn't really have a very concrete like stake to it, like level of stakes to it, whereas "I'm going to expose you for embezzlement unless you cut me in" has a much clearer goalpost and or like tangible results as a if that thing is to go wrong or if that subplot is to not be properly fulfilled. So I had to make the stakes of that a bit more concrete throughout. The timing of the scenes were a little bit different in the way I intercut had to just like diverge a bit from the outline, mostly because the outline was for a 32-page script and this ended up ballooning out a little bit to 35. I'm not exactly sure where those expansions are on a scene-by-scene level, but I found myself wishing I had more pages, definitely. I hope that helps a little bit there. And was there something specific? Does that answer the question, or did you want to know more about one?
Yeah, no. I was just curious about, sometimes we kind of veer off a little bit from the plan.
Right.
But it sounds like that was mostly pretty tightly matching your scene cards, it seemed.
Yeah, I tend to stick very closely to the scene cards. And I recommend you, if you can't write scene cards that you can stick to, you might need to change something in your process so that you are writing outlines that you will stick to. At least as best you can. It's sometimes you surprise yourself or sometimes things go off track and it ends up fine. But try to write outlines you can stick to, because if you're delivering on those outlines in a writer's room or in even for a feature, the people you're working with are going to expect you to write the thing that you said you were going to write. Other questions?
I have a question. So, did you like have the finale idea before, early stage?
The finale meaning the show with the trapdoor and that whole thing?
The birthday and the assassin combined with the show.
That came on.
Yeah.
I didn't have that immediately when going into this plot. I had to kind of figure out what the conflict would be or how best that the knave would confront that conflict in a way that tells us this is going to be a sample of what he's doing in the rest of the show. So the idea that it had to be in performance or it had to be like a plot that he foils through the performance somehow just naturally occurred to me in the math of how we were looking at the story, because you're going to want to make your pilot episode represent the core of what the show is moving forward. And so the knave using his comedian clown skills to keep the realm together is at the core of the entire show. And so I needed a plot line and a way that he could confront it and encounter this obstacle and can overcome this obstacle that would be utilizing his greatest strengths, if that makes sense. So I had to kind of do a little bit of algebra to figure out what exactly that would be. And the intercutting had to not give away too much of what the finale, like we didn't want to, you run the risk of not showing enough so that people don't understand what's happening or showing too much so that there's no surprise. So that took a little bit of balancing as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. Good question. Other questions? If not, then we'll just wrap up. And thank you guys so much for coming to this one-off promotional class for Script Camp. Again, we have brand new classes coming up very soon. We have on Friday that class at 11 a.m. and also at 6 p.m. That's going to be in the morning, the best protagonist for your story. And then in the evening at 6 p.m., that's week 2 of TV writing boot camp. Feature boot camp starts Sunday the 8th at 11 a.m. Nacho, anything else that we need to tell people about?
No, that's the main thing, is just come back. If you're writing a TV pilot, join us for the next class exactly the same time on Friday, 6 p.m. It's a free class. Everyone's invited. And if you have time in the morning, 11 a.m. Pacific time, there's a matching your protagonist with your story. Mm-hmm. If you're writing a feature, join us on Sunday. That's going to be 11 a.m. on Sunday, January 8th.
Let me get out of the way here.
Feature boot camp.
Thanks a lot, guys. If that is all, then I will dismiss the class for today, and we hope to see you guys Friday at 11 or 6, and then Sunday at 8 for week 1 of feature. All right, thanks so much for reading, folks. You all did great, and I hope that you learned a bit and gained a bit from this class. Little insight into the things that go into a TV show as we take it all the way from core nucleus to a completed script. Okay, we'll say goodnight. Go ahead.
I learned a lot. Well, because I read it already, but I learned a lot reading it. And it's interesting. I learned more reading it than I did when I read other pilots. Like, I think it's when I know the person that's writing it, I think I look at it differently, or it feels more like, I don't know, there's something more like, because I know you. Mm-hmm. And so it's like I can sort of see how your mind is working. I don't know. There's something different about knowing who's writing it a little bit, like knowing the person. But then also, like, yeah, I felt smarter as a result of reading it. Like, just in terms of the smarter in terms of how you went about tying things together, but also just this, the symbolism, overlaying the action. I mean, it was very cool. So
thanks, Amanda.
I'm a better person for reading.
A better human being. We're all better people today, I think. Yeah. Hopefully we gained a bit of courtly wisdom from the knave in his adventures, at the very least.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will wish you all good night. Thank you so much for coming and for reading and for attending. We hope to see you guys soon at your next script camp class or event. Have a great rest of your nights.